have stakeholders go beyond paper, and I think the Planning Ministry and World Bank and other partners very much in the heavy lift have done an excellent job. At this point, I also want to thank Naji, the country director, whom I have very sorry to say kept up many parts of the night, even until last night. So I wish you a speedy recovery from my Zoom calls. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you, as we are, the whole federal government and the provinces are looking forward to working with all of you. Just a few things. The details will be presented by the Planning Minister, as already has been the strategic details. But it's my job to point out that two broad things. This has never happened to anyone before. Two, so yes, this is not going to be limited to Pakistan or a one-time episode. We have to not just hope it won't happen again. This exercise today is about planning. And
वफाकी वज़ीर बराए मौसमियाती तब्दीली शेर रहमान न्यूज़ कॉन्फ्रेंस कर रही हैं इस वक्त इस्लामाबाद में। आपको बताएं कि वफाकी वज़ीर बराए मौसमियाती तब्दीली शेर रहमान की न्यूज़ कॉन्फ्रेंस इस वक्त इस्लामाबाद में जारी है।
वफाकी वज़ीर मौसमियाती तब्दीली शेर रहमान इस वक्त न्यूज़ कॉन्फ्रेंस कर रही हैं। इस्लामाबाद से बराह रास्त ये न्यूज़ कॉन्फ्रेंस आप मुलाहिज़ा कर सकते हैं।
That has fed you and your families for 5,000 years, and that you can't build this mud hut again as your home. Of course, we are right, because the mud hut, it gets washed away, it puts people at acute risk, and it puts entire communities in the line of what we saw as a destructive and disease-causing flood. Now, when we tell people to move away and start rebuilding in areas that probably they haven't lived before, because Sindh has been transformed, and again I want to say very clearly, Balochistan will, we hope and plan, recover. It was less affected, but Sindh has suffered the damage, loss and damage worth at least 80% of this flood. The brunt of the flood was taken by Sindh. You all know why that happened. The monsoon was 7 times through all of August, what we've never seen before. 7 times what it was ever. And, Sindh is now, much of the land is sinking. It's under seawater. It's under sea level. Both vectors are a direct impact of climate change and global warming. And you've seen the topography of the country from Gilgit-Baltistan to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and AJK normally is where the flood rises. The riverine flood rises there. This time it rose when the glacial lake outburst floods were erupting in anger and fury that, again, we have not seen before. The heat waves of 53 degrees plus took our GLOF events into 3 times as much as what we've ever seen. So 300% additions, 18 GLOF events this year for the first time. The heat waves, the forest fires, the drought. The Indus was bone dry before this flood came. Normally, Sindh and the south of Punjab wait for the monsoon. They see as a relief. They want the flood to, they want the rain to help their crops. But this time, of course, it's decimated everything in its path. So to make sure that there's such decimation in that path does not occur, so while we're in a triple planetary crisis, Pakistan just endured a triple planetary flood. And this monsoon on steroids, as the Secretary General says, is a climate disaster of the decade. Why we have to be mindful is that climate is not in any one country's control. Neither is its impact. What happened in Pakistan will not stay in Pakistan. So every country will face a cascade of such events at one point or another. Western Europe's already feeling it. But, I'm sorry, but what we just saw was a postcard from the edge of a memo from nature. This memo was not to Pakistan. It was to humanity. It was for people to make the right decisions. It was for redistributive justice, which is obviously climate justice in any words. And for that reason, I am very clear in what we are taking to COP. My colleagues here mentioned, to us it's the most important conference of the year, always, of all times, and we're hoping that countries will understand, will do the heavy lift beyond the humanitarian need and understand that when climate disasters hit, there needs to be recovery windows that climate disaster prone and vulnerable countries can access with speed, agility, and predictability. If a climate disaster hits my country or yours, you should be able to draw on first needs resources immediately. No one country can service 33 million people at one go. I'm seriously would be challenged to hear that. And so we're very grateful for all our partners. But please also bear in mind that we have to make some planning changes. We have to think about rebuilding with great resilience. And in doing so, resilience rebuilding also requires a great amount of technical capacity. It needs political heft on the ground. Please, 10 communities, move away from the village that you've lived in for centuries. We cannot allow you to live here. You can't police people to become climate resilient. You have to give them incentives. Those incentives are rooted in better livelihoods, a more productive year, an income stream that is not unreliable for them. After the loss of livestock and crop, that is a great worry, and that's a recurring anxiety, and it is on our calendar of of imminent anxieties, which is how will these people actually get back on their feet with a future of an income stream that is predictable. So building all of that requires a great deal of technical capacity, and I'm sorry to bring this up here, but it requires a great deal more of funding than just humanitarian recovery. Climate resilient infrastructure rebuilding requires a large envelope of funds. It also requires the technical and scientific capacity on the ground to build the advice chain, to resume our supply chains. We need all that. And so we're bringing it up at COP for not just loss and damage, but for adaptation to be at the heart of recovery for countries that are in the front line, literally the ground zero of climate-induced disasters. We may or may not experience all of this the next year, but we will certainly be facing the drought. We will certainly be facing a heat wave, and our glaciers will be melting very fast. So with these few words, I just want to say, let's not vulnerability become a death sentence or a life sentence for countries like us. Let us be collectively mindful of our responsibilities, also our jobs on the ground here, and hope that we can reset the bargain between the global north and the south as we go into rebuilding our future here. So with those words, I want to thank all of you, and particularly our host, the Planning Ministry, and the Minister Ehsan Iqbal, who spent day and night, I don't know when he sleeps, on this, and all partners here. Again, my apologies, World Bank, for keeping you up all night. Thank you very much.